Can you feel it coming? Something's waking up inside. Hearts ablaze, we're standing tall, breaking chains of yesterday. Till America finds its voice. In the darkness we make choice. Truth and healing lead the way. Hearts ablaze, we're here to stay. Rise from ashes, come what may. We're finding hope in disarray.
Today we're speaking with Bryan Power. He is a relationship coach. He teaches the integrated attachment theory program. He has a website, myrelationshipfail.com. Bryan, could you please introduce yourself? Let people know just a little bit about you, please.
Hey, Ed, thanks so much for having me on the show today. And it's a pleasure to be here with you guys. And I'm going to share a little bit about my story, and hopefully we can help some people today with that. And a little bit about me. I really was born, in 1969 to a single mom. My father battled some addiction and stuff. And so my mom raised us, my brother and I, through the 70s as a single mom. We moved around a lot of turmoil, a lot of chaos, a lot of craziness. And what I learned is that would later play out in my life, in my relationships. And it would play out in a big way in 2024 when my wife and I would go from having what I would thought was a pretty good relationship, with some issues, nothing crazy, to a complete, relationship chaos and failure, to the point where I had a restraining order against me. That was the end of the relationship. It was over, in my opinion. But through that experience, I did come across the integrated attachment theory program created by Thais Gibson out of Canada. That program I would credit to really helping me get back on track, learning a lot of things about how to have healthier relationships and put my relationship back together eventually. And we use a lot of those tools today to continue to have a great relationship with my wife today. We were able to kind of fix it through some providence here, and things happen, and now we're able to have a really great relationship. And now I like to help others do the same by teaching them how they can overcome some of their issues and some of their personal stuff that they may be dealing with, so they can have a healthy, happy, good life and good relationships with other people.
Bryan, that's why I podcast. We are of the same era. I was born in 1966, and my wife and I, we got together in 1983. We got married in 1985. 2 weeks from today, recording, is our 40th wedding anniversary. And I'll tell you, it's been a rocky road for many years. And these core key elements that is attached to this program, I find very interesting, because it is actually what saved my marriage. And believe me, I went through some roller coasters, infidelities. My wife left me, and through Providence, we got back together, and it's all worked out rather well for what I do today. So why do you think that people should listen to somebody like us?
Well, they don't have to, right? That's your choice. But certainly, I'm an honest guy. It sounds like you are too, Ed, right? So, we've had some experiences that have obviously shaped our lives. The challenges that we've faced, we've been able to kind of overcome and deal with. And I'm not saying we've done them perfectly or what have you. Obviously, it's been a struggle through that process. But my goal is to reach some people, especially if I can reach them younger, to be able to start doing the work now and really kind of avoid a lot of the things that we went through, so that you can have a healthier, happier life starting at 19 and 20 or something like that, and not have to wait till you're in your 50s to bring it all together. And you can avoid a lot of those painful experiences, dealing with it sounds like you and your wife went through a lot, right? Where we've been able to overcome them. But let's be honest, if we could have avoided these, and done it differently and had it happen in a healthier, happier way, it would have been a whole lot better to do that. And so that's why I share my story. I hope that somebody would connect with it and realize that, I'm just here to help. And that's all my heart is now. I have a real passion to learned this stuff, and I've learned a lot from it. And I just want to share that knowledge so that other people can avoid some of the stuff we've been through. So hopefully it'll resonate with somebody.
Yeah, that I call it bridge building because we're like bridge builders, and that's really what my goal is to help those younger people understand it's okay. You're going to have these failures, and a lot of it surrounds the impact that we were under during our early years in life, and we weren't together with our partner. We were with our family, and these values that we may not understand, well, they stick and they carry on into the relationship. And my family, it it was nothing like a family, really. It was a clan, and it was fend for yourself and get things done. So that's what I expected out of my wife. And I drug that value with me, and it really caused havoc. And, my wife is a very timid woman, and she went through some traumas early on. And I found that if we're not going to look inside and find what's wrong with us, we're never going to be able to have a balanced life. And if we expect to live with someone, we have to take them for as they are, not as we expect them to be. And that's really hard to do at times because of those early childhood impacts. And that's what you're really pushing in your message today, is fighting these early behaviors to help develop your overall behaviors in the present time. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, whether you come through a little bit of a chaotic childhood, or like myself, and possibly you, Ed, or if you came through a very stable childhood where you had really, pretty healthy parents who did a pretty good job overall. Either way, we can still develop a lot of trauma, and that's what I've learned, is that we develop trauma throughout our lives that becomes our subconscious perception of how we perceive the world, how we perceive relationships, and how we think others are supposed to act and interact with us, and all these things. And 95 to 97% of our decisions are made by the subconscious. And so all these things are stuck in our subconscious level, and they're really on auto tape. They're just playing automatically in our lives, and we don't realize it, what it's doing sometimes. And it could be doing a lot of damage if it's not the right, tapes, if you will. If it's from a wounded place, a lot of times these things are playing out in a negative way. We just don't even realize it because our perception is so distorted from our own wounds and some of the things we've experienced. And so it's very, if you can learn this early and get the awareness where, it's okay to say, I have some issues. It's okay to realize, like, okay, I may have some, different ways of looking at this that I can do differently so that I can have a healthier, happier relationship in life and get through these wounds. The earlier you can do that, the more you're going to set yourself up for success, and to have a really good, long-term life where a lot of your stress, your health issues can go away because of less stress. Your financial issues can go away because of less stress. And some of these things, you just set yourself up so much better. So it's a real great opportunity for anybody to learn it and grow from this. And there's so much out there that and back in our day when we were growing up, probably early on, there wasn't as much easy access to some of this learning stuff. And so there is a lot of opportunity to learn these things today. And I was fortunate enough, again, to come across something that really has worked for me. So integrated attachment theory. So that's something that I found worked for me, and it's really been helpful. So, but it's out there. There's help if you want it.
So you are actually certified to teach this theory. Could you actually go over some of the steps that the program covers to help people?
Yeah, absolutely. So integrated attachment theory was created by Thais Gibson. It's based off of attachment theory, which has been around really since the 70s. Attachment theory is really how we attach in relationships. Just a quick synopsis of that. There's 4 categories of attachments, if you will. Number 1, you have a healthy, secure attachment style. That's the people who really communicate well, have their emotions in balance, really kind of set healthy boundaries, really know how to handle things fairly well, and I figured out how to do this thing, if you will. And that's really where we all aspire to be, so we can kind of reach that point. The relationships are important to them, but again, it's not. If it doesn't work out and they end up breaking up, they may hurt a little bit, but it's not going to be the end all for them. It's just it's part of the process, it's part of life, and they kind of deal with that. And again, that's just where we all want to be. Unfortunately, for most of us, we're going to fall in the other 3 categories: either anxious, preoccupied, dismissive avoidant, or a fearful avoidant. And those are the unhealthy ones with a lot of different types of wounds. And just a quick synopsis on that. If you're anxious, you're going to be somebody who really craves closeness, really wants a lot of attention, really wants to communicate a lot. Relationship is hyper important. A lot of fears of abandonment, a lot of fear of being alone in there. And so that's just, again, we act in ways that are not really, they're unbecoming because we have some of these underlying fears, but we become, again, what's called an anxious preoccupied. On the other side is kind of what's a dismissive avoidant. Typically likes a lot of space, really deals with things alone, hyper independent. Not really good at communicating verbally. They communicate more with their emotion, with their actions, if you will. Can be very difficult to read, but just very isolated, very hard to, they have a hard time connecting with their own emotions. And then they really have a hard time connecting with others, if you will. So that becomes an issue for them. In the middle of that is what's called the fearful avoidant. These people tend to swing both sides. They 1 week they can, be very anxious and connected and loving and kind and everything else. And then maybe next week they're kind of, breaking up with you for no reason out of the blue, or, having fights with you for some no reason. Just things are a little bit more chaotic, right? A little more all over the board. 1 week they're close, next week they're distant and stuff like that. But these you can see could be very problematic. And until you understand some of your own core wounds, it's really hard to understand that. But once you understand that, it really starts to make a lot of sense. And so that was just a quick synopsis. If you really delve into that work, you can really understand your own attachment style, and then see your partner's attachment style. And now, once you understand both sides, it starts to make more sense. And you start to see how we can work on that and improve it. And that's what I like about Thais Gibson. Her work improves those attachment styles. And the 6 core elements to the integrated attachment style are: number 1, your core wounds; number 2, your needs; number 3, your emotions; number 4, your boundaries; number 5, your communication; and number 6, your behaviors. So when we work on all 6 of those elements of the program, we really begin to change the relationship, number 1, to ourselves, and then number 2, to our spouse, our family, our friends, everything else. We learn how to have really what we consider healthy, good relationships.
I like it a lot. Those elements there, the big ones for me is the emotions, because a lot of dealing with things like this, emotions are high. And if we don't have that emotional intelligence, it's hard to understand what's happening to us and why we feel this way. And this shame, guilt can really, make us suffer a lot from that emotion swing. And then another one is boundaries. I love this one. It's the one that set me free, knowing how to set and hold boundaries. I always thought boundaries were rules for people, and that's not the case. Boundaries are for ourselves, and it's what we allow for ourselves. So we can't expect someone to adhere to our boundaries. We have to know those boundaries we set, and we have to be able to hold those. That's very difficult to do in times. How can we actually set healthy boundaries and hold those boundaries without getting lost in emotion?
Yeah, all that work it kind of all correlates together. And so, as we get a little bit more control of our emotions, number 1, emotions are not bad. So don't be afraid of emotions. If you are angry and you're noticing your heightened anger or your heightened fear, something like that, or even heightened on the good side, right? Really happy. The key is to ask yourself, why? what are the thoughts I'm having that are causing me to feel this way? That's really what it is. Our beliefs cause our thoughts cause our emotions, and then our emotions ultimately lead to our actions. So belief, thoughts, emotions, actions. But when I'm feeling emotional, emotions are just information. And what I want to do is understand, what is that information trying to tell me? What are my thoughts behind this that I can learn from? And is that a healthy emotion? Is that a healthy thought? Excuse me. So is that thought proper? Is it real? Is it true? And then begin to work on the thoughts. If it's not a healthy thought, then it's going to lead to an unhealthy, emotion. So we begin to work on that. And then as we, begin to understand our emotions and learn how to, maybe, deal with those emotions, we learn how to set boundaries. We learn what our needs are. We learn how to set the boundaries to make sure that all these things are coming together. And I just find them very synergistic. So I truly believe, though, at the core of that is the core wounds, though. I think until we understand our core wounds, the subconscious just plays out sometimes where, it seems like we're sabotaging ourselves, our lives. We just seem like we're in chaos sometimes and we don't know why, because again, subconsciously, we just haven't figured out what's really causing these unhealthy patterns. So I think we need to discover those, and we do discover those through asking ourselves the emotions, the thoughts, patterns that we're having. What are the things that we're dealing with? So if I'm highly emotional, is my thought because, this person's going to leave me, they don't love me, maybe I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life, or I'm not good enough, or I'm feeling shame. So we start to think about those things, and then we begin to heal those things. Okay, maybe that thought pattern is incorrect. How can I then, overcome my belief of, being alone or not good enough? How can I overcome the idea that I'm going to be abandoned and, and I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life, type of thing? So once I begin to fix that, I begin to have, a little bit better emotional stability. I can then also work on my needs. What do I truly need in my life? Learn how to, handle, number one, discover my needs. Number two, begin to fill those needs on my own mostly. So I'm not outsourcing my needs. I'm going to, meet my own needs as much as possible. And then when I do have outside needs that need to be met, bring in the right people that can help, again, meet those types of needs. And so, communication is a big one for me. I've learned how to, number one, never communicate when you're triggered, you're at a heightened emotional state. It's always best to walk away, give each other space, but communicate that. And that's the key, is not to just walk away and just be mad and walk away. No, communicate and say, hey, you know what? I'm not feeling well right now. I'm heightened emotionally. I really just want to get to a better state of mind. And then I want to revisit this conversation with you. Can you just give me a couple hours, maybe even a day or two, until we can kind of get there? So, but I do want to discuss this with you, right? And so we're not having these arguments, and we don't turn little discussions into, heightened arguments and stuff like that. That's been a huge one for me. Behaviors, learning how to walk out of the house sometimes if I'm triggered, right? Changing my behaviors, doing things that can help me get emotionally more regulated. And sometimes I'll just go for a walk for an hour or two, and until I feel my body get more regulated, and I feel emotionally I'm more, relaxed now. And that those behavioral changes can make a huge difference. They're just great. There's so many wonderful little things that we can do, and tips and tricks here, that when we start doing them all, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there, next thing you know, we're really climbing the stairs, and we're on our way to success. And we can look back and go, wow, I'm doing things a whole lot differently than I did last year.
Yeah, and that incremental growth, it's needed to reflect on that. Wow, I came a long ways. That boosts you into your next success. And I'll tell you, when those emotions are flaring and you have those issues, the number one gift is being able to say, hey, I'm not going to discuss this right now with you because we're unable to have this discussion right now. Our emotions are too high. And when I was able to learn how to do that, it changed our life. I always feared that my wife would walk out and leave me, that fear of the unknown, because I really love my wife and I really enjoy my relationship. I don't want to offend her, but sometimes we have to offend to reach that ultimate success. So if we offend, that's obvious that they don't realize there's a problem. And when we can uncover that and pick that scab off in the right way, it can heal and become better for us in a way, correct?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We're not always going to agree with our spouse, and there are going to be touchy subjects, and there are going to be, times where we talk about things and we have different ideas and thoughts about it, and sometimes that can frustrate us and that can get us a little angry. But then again, how do we deal with that? And that's the thing. It's okay to get there. It's okay to have that. Our spouse challenges us to be better and learn and grow, and so that's not necessarily a bad thing. But if we get to that point, then how can I take a little step back and say, hey, you know what? This is important conversation. This is stuff I definitely want to work through with you. But right now, obviously, maybe this isn't the best time to do it. So let's get ourselves to a healthier state of mind so we can come back and revisit this. I love you. I care about you. I'm not going anywhere. And it's, and we're going to revisit this at a better time. So long as we communicate that it's hard sometimes because the emotions play out, right? And sometimes somebody's just doesn't want to let it go and doesn't want to put it on the shelf for a little while. But that's where it's very important if you have both people kind of learning this and growing together and getting to a healthier spot, it's beneficial. But even if you are the only one in that relationship right now that can do that, maybe you need to take the lead and be the person that does it and kind of takes that, that lead. And sometimes that other person will follow. I definitely feel like, two people are better than one, but one person is better than none. So if you're learning and growing and doing that, at least it gives yourself a chance, your relationship a chance. I think if neither person is doing it, then you're going to stay in the chaos. And it's not really going to get any better. So, be the person that takes a step. Do the work. Hopefully, your spouse will come with you eventually. Sometimes it takes you doing it for a couple of months before they start to come along and realize, wow, this person is changing. This person is doing some good things, and they do want to, work with you on that. And if they love you and they care, then they're going to probably eventually get there, and they're going to realize, oh, you know what, I want to have this relationship with this person because I do love them, and I want to grow together. And I do find that happens a lot. Somebody's got to start the process.
Yes, that might be the most important thing that we discuss here today is the importance to take that first step. And even if it's awkward and hard, someone has to do it, or else you're going to just keep in that rat race, in that wheel, that rat cage, and it's no place to be. It really inhibits growth. So once you allow yourself to be honest and, you know, the communication value there is key. Once you allow that honesty in your relationship, that can really help grow your self inside, because then you can walk together in your past and help heal those past wounds. I've noticed that with my wife and I. Each week now we set aside an hour to just sit and read about topics, and we pick a book, we go through these things, and it helps us open up those old wounds, and now we can actually discuss those things. And I found that time to be one of the key things to help us grow together. Setting aside personal time, saying, I want to do this because I care about you. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I love that idea. I think anytime we set aside time to actually, do some work on ourselves and our spouse, it's a good thing. It does take a little bit of work on this thing. Relationship take work. But I always find that the relationship to ourself is the first and foremost one that we need to work on is my relationship to me. And as I begin to heal me more, as I begin to, discover more about myself and build that confidence and everything else, then I'm able to be more vulnerable and not be afraid as much. And, understand that I can share. And if most people aren't, but certainly my spouse isn't, if she really loves me, she's going to want to, she's not going to laugh at me in a way that's, condemning or anything. No, she's going to say that, she actually loves when I'm vulnerable. And it's hard to be vulnerable sometimes. I'm a guy, right? I don't want to be vulnerable. That's weird. It's tough. But, if I'm vulnerable, like she appreciates vulnerability. And now I can realize, wow, wait a second, you know what? I can be vulnerable with this person, and they're actually going to appreciate that vulnerability and actually help me grow through it and change through it and heal through that, right? And so, yeah, it's just great. I don't know, for my wife and I, we hit the wall. Things got so crazy, so ugly, that we learned in a hard way that we had a lot of our own issues, and but we worked through a lot of those issues. And we're able to come out on this other side of this thing, and it's just like a totally much different world that I never thought existed here. But it's pretty amazing, and you can definitely see like, wow, what a difference compared to what we had. And even though I thought it was pretty decent before, I look back and go, man, it's like not even close to what we have today. So the experience itself was great for that, but it did start with, number one, the first thing was accepting our own faults, because when she challenged me to see a therapist, I decided, okay, I'm willing to go see a therapist, because I'm like, okay, but she thought I had all the issues, right? So I was the one with all the issues. You need to see a therapist. I'm like, okay, fair enough. I'll go check it out and see if I can learn something. But I also challenge you to see a therapist, because in my mind, she was the one with all the issues, right? And so that's the whole thing, is like, we always think it's the other person's fault. We always think they're the ones that have the issues. They're the problem. They have the issues, blah, blah, blah. When in reality, I have a lot of issues myself. I have to look inward and say, okay, what can I fix? What am I doing to this? How am I showing up in this that's causing some of the problems here? And when we both do that, then it's a home run. And then we can both kind of take some ownership, begin to do some work and change and stuff. So, fortunately for both of us, it had to hit a really dramatically horrible spot before we were willing to look at it and then make those changes. But hopefully, again, I hope that somebody doesn't have to get there. But if you do, sometimes it does happen, because, again, our subconscious can play out. But if you can become aware of it before it gets to that point, God bless, that's the home run. Because if you can be aware of it and then say, oh, wait a second, I don't want it to get any worse. I want to work on this before it gets to that critical stage. That's the best way to go. So.
Many years ago, I believe it was in the early 90s, my wife and we just started really getting into looking for relationship counseling, trying to figure out what's going on here. And we ran across a Christian counselor that put us in this program, and he gave us some videotapes of a guy called Gary Smalley, and he is so excellent. He opened my eyes to the reality that men and women are different. We think different, we act different, we aspire differently. So, and that's okay. The difference is what attraction comes out of. But, for instance, in the bathroom, you might like everything in order, and she might just want to throw something around, and those little.
Have you been in my bathroom? Is that? Did you see my bathroom, Ed?
Those little differences can be overwhelming and cause irritation. And just because it's really small like that, we might not say something and let it go, but it builds up. And these differences is what we have to be aware of. Men and women are built different, they act different, they have different body chemistries, and sometimes we forget that as males and females, that we are different and it's okay to be different. Sometimes a woman or a man wants to change their partner after they get into a relationship. Why did you fall in love with the person? And we have to remember that people are different. So if we really want to know somebody, we have to really dive deep and ask the questions early and understand, are we going to accept the differences, or do we want to be rigid and strict and hold this is the way it has to be. Because when we do that, oftentimes I have found out that's not the way it works at all. So, what do you think about the differences between men and women and the ability to just let it go?
Yeah, so I mean, you do have the difference between men and women. That's obviously, important, and that's a big factor. But along with that is you have the difference in attachment styles and the wounds that are playing out. So you mentioned that story about sometimes let's say you're in the bathroom. I like it clean. She doesn't mind a little bit of mess. Now, if I say to her, hey, you know what, this is really messy. You got to clean this up. It's really, I can't stand this. You got to do this. And in her brain, she might be like, hey, I'm perfectly okay with this. Why are you giving me such a hard time? She may be not feeling loved, like, oh, you don't love me enough to just be okay with this. And you know what I mean? So, but in my mind, I'm like, well, if you can't clean that, maybe, you're not respecting me. You're not, so these are the wounds that we're playing, right? So we make it believe, we think it's totally something different. We make it out to be more than what it actually is. So it's not really the mess that's there. And Thais Gibson tells a story about that, where like the husband and wife, where the clothes were being left on the floor, right? And so the husband was leaving the clothes on the floor. The wife was like, hey, I appreciate you picking it up, and ultimately they were end up in counseling for this, and but the whole thing was like, well, what do you make it mean? Okay, when that person doesn't pick up the clothes off the floor, I feel disrespected, and that's why they're not. Oh, okay, so that's the story I'm telling you. It's not this mess itself. It's the story I'm telling myself about the mess. The husband was saying, well, if it means that much to her for me to pick this up, she must not love me, because if it's that important and she's getting mad at me for not picking it up, she doesn't love me. She doesn't care about me. But that's not true, right? Those are totally wrong, because the wife is feeling disrespected. Now the wife is acting off feeling disrespected. She's acting in ways that make her, obviously going off of that information, completely false. The husband loves her, does respect her in so many ways. It's just one of those things that he wasn't doing properly, and maybe he grew up that way. It's just a pattern. Not saying he can't work on that. Obviously, that's something we can work together and change. To say, hey, you know what? Maybe we can find some balance. This is my wife and I. My wife likes to leave the clothes on the floor, but at the end of the day, is it going to be that? Is it worth losing the relationship over? Is it that important so that we can't figure this out a little bit? We have to meet in the middle a little bit. Hey, how can we do a better job? I see that it's important to you. I do respect you. I want to fix that. And vice versa. So I don't want to make it so important that I lose you. Of course not. That's ridiculous. But we have to meet in the middle a little bit. But our differences can play out. The key is to figure out, what are we telling ourselves about the differences and those things, and if they are elevating to a point where the emotional state, now we're getting triggered off of that. We're triggered because of the stories that we're telling ourselves subconsciously, as to really what's going on here. So that's the key on that, is to understand what is really my thought patterns as to why this situation is triggering me emotionally so much, and then be able to figure that out and then communicate it differently and meet in the middle.
Sometimes I even tell my wife, hey, I'm not your enemy. I really love you, and it's okay. And just bringing back that awareness, because those old wounds can actually spark things subconsciously, and we don't even realize we're there. And now it can help bring her back to, oh yeah, okay, and we can resume our conversation. And that was so hard for so many years, because we did not know how to bring that accountability to our conversation. It's really big. So being different, and that doesn't just mean man and wife. That means everybody. We're different. So that plays out in our relationships in the world also. Those little minute differences that we all kind of get so mad about. So just awareness of these things can help a lot. Talk to us about some of the things that you work with people about, and how you bring them into a discovery call type atmosphere.
Yeah, I mean, I like to guide people to my website first and foremost. If you go to my website, makeyourrelationshipfail.com or myrelationshipfail.com, I like to talk about how, using failure as a launching pad to success. When we're struggling, when we're, having these issues, sometimes, unfortunately, it reaches a critical stage. That critical stage can turn around, though. I want you to understand you're not being punished. You're being given a chance to change it. You're being given a chance to be aware of it and then do something about it. And so I don't care where your relationship is. I don't care what your spouse has done at this point. They've left you, they're out of the house, all these other things. The relationship can be fixed, but you got to fix yourself. First thing you got to do is you got to say, okay, I got to accept where we're at in life. And I've got to be willing to do some work so that I can begin to be healthier myself, so that I can hopefully attract a healthy relationship into my life. And whether it's with that person coming back into your life, and now you're able to both operate at a higher level, or eventually, if that unfortunately that relationship does end, at least you can then begin a new relationship with some new tools that you can now bring into a new relationship that will allow you to do that. So I work with people trying to, number one, handle their situation first and foremost, and start to change our mindset so that we can take this approach of, hey, we're going to use this to our advantage. I always talk about a Super Ball. The harder and faster a Super Ball hits the ground, the higher that thing's going to bounce. So we want to think of ourselves like Super Balls, right? So if you're hitting the ground real hard right now, that's okay. We're going to turn this thing around, and we're going to start doing the work. We're going to start doing the work on those 6 core elements of the program. We want to start discovering our wounds and, what are the thought patterns we're having behind that are really causing the problems. I really feel like that's the root of it all. There's some really great workbooks in the personal development school that I have people join, which is Tice Gibson's school, but I coach them through that. So when you join that personal development school through my website, you're going to get, number one, the best price. Number two, you're going to get a free session with me. So I'm going to talk to you about your situation. We're going to see if we can point you in the right direction, get some ideas as to what we can do to kind of, get you in the right direction on that. And then if you want to work with me on a regular basis, we'll do that. But I'm going to take you through the 6 core elements, begin to start, working on your core wounds, do some work on your needs, discover your needs more, really begin to, figure out what those are. How can you get some strategies to start, fulfilling your needs on your own mostly, so you're not outsourcing them as little as possible. We want to start figuring out our emotions again. What kind of information can we gather from our emotions when we're triggered? Begin to really understand that better. We want to start figuring out how to do those boundaries. How do I set some boundaries? What are healthy boundaries? So maybe I'm setting completely unhealthy boundaries. Maybe they're just outrageous, or maybe I'm boundaryless. So how do I meet in the middle on the boundaries where it's like reasonable, healthy, good boundaries? And then, how do I communicate those? And then how do I make sure those are kind of enforced, if you will, right? So that is very important. Then my communication, that's a big one. I really like to help people get better communication skills, understanding our communication. The way our partner communicates sometimes is completely different. I would say a lot of times we're trying to communicate the same thing, but because I'm talking English and maybe the other person's talking Chinese, let's say, we may not be able to understand each other. And that happens a lot. Number one, because men and women, but number two, sometimes our attachment style plays out, and the way we perceive the information that we're hearing comes into our brains a little bit differently. So even though we're trying to say something good and healthy and positive to each other, we're just saying it the wrong way. We're kind of perceiving it the wrong way, and that becomes a real mess. And then last but not least, our behaviors. How can I really begin to change some of my behaviors so I can act like a real man and somebody that knows how to handle these emotions and kind of commands respect, not because I tell you to respect me, but simply because you respect me because of the way I do things and the way I kind of handle my life, and I am doing things on a healthier version. So I'm not destroying myself with poor behaviors. I'm not going out there doing negative things that are going to actually add fuel to the fire in a negative way. I'm going to start changing my behaviors that are going to be positive. And so I coach people through that, and we kind of work together to kind of build off of that and take you through this whole step so that we can get you a little bit faster. If you want to move the needle a little bit faster, then I'll coach you through that. If you're okay taking more time, then I have you just join the personal development school through my website and start doing the work on your own. And it's a great community within that group. It's a really great community on a daily basis. Great webinars, great community where you can talk afterwards and share some thoughts and feelings with people who are dealing with the same thing that we are, different attachment styles and stuff like that. And it's just a really great group. But that's another thing I think is very important. Have a good support group that if you are dealing with some really tough situations here, it's really good to have a good group that you can bounce ideas off of, and that you're going to be heard and validated along the way. And so you begin to get a little bit more hope and realize that, okay, somebody's been through this and they're now a year or two in and they're totally different and they have some positive stories to tell. My story is just one of many. So, but yeah, that's kind of my approach as far as how I begin to try to help people and guide them to, start doing some work.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And you mentioned support. It's so important to have support. And we can find that support in so many different ways, especially nowadays. We have online and we can find people like you, Brian, and we can actually, you know, reach out and get these people involved in our lives in ways that we never could before. And if we are interested in a good, healthy relationship, which means we're really interested in a good, healthy, balanced life, we need people in our life. How do we find the right support? Because there are support systems out there that might not be the best support systems. So, what's your recommendations on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that really comes back to having some discernment, and kind of feeling out like, who's really giving me the truth, who's really sharing, openly, and not trying to manipulate me in any way for financial gain or any other reason, simply just to help me. I think that's a good start, right? Because if there's an ulterior motive, sometimes if somebody's trying to reach out to you, then they may not give you all the exact information that you need to hear. But you'll feel it out. Sometimes we have to unfortunately join a group that doesn't work for us. Maybe it works short term, and a month or two later we realize, yeah, that's maybe not the right group, and need to move on and figure it out. But it takes a little time for that. For me, I've been very fortunate. I'm a Bible believing guy, so I think a good church can be a great place to start. You can find some good people there that are going through similar things. Not perfect. People in church are not perfect. They're struggling with their own stuff, but there could be some really good people in there that are headed in that direction. And start asking questions. Like, hey, is there anybody who can help me with this? This is something I'm struggling with, and do you have some different places to go? I've been fortunate. Again, I was very fortunate to find and come across the integrated attachment theory and that program, the personal development school. And I feel like that's a great group if you're trying to figure out relationships and trying to understand how to have healthier, happier, better relationships. I feel like it's an incredible group. Lots of treasure trove of information here that we can work through. Just constantly something to do and something to work on that you can get information on, learn from. Great people that are going in the same direction. I think that's the key sometimes is we want to find people that are like-minded, that we kind of connect with a little bit, and that we can kind of relate to, and then learn from them. If they've been in the game a little bit longer than us, maybe we can trust them and find a good mentor type of guy, right? So somebody who can say, like yourself, Ed, right? Hey, you've got a lot of experience. It seems like you've been through this. Can you help me? Can you help me get through this, and maybe help me avoid some of the pitfalls that you went through. So, and that's it. You just have to trust that person, and that's something. I think that's the key is who do I trust? Who can I trust in this regard? And that hopefully you can figure that out a little bit, but that does take a little time. And I like to think of myself as trustworthy, but trust is built, trust is earned sometimes, and so it's just something we just have to go through a little bit sometimes to figure out who can I really stick with and work through. And if it doesn't feel right, you get with somebody. If it doesn't feel right after a little while, then it's okay to walk away and move to the next person and grab onto somebody, the next thing, So don't feel like you have to stay with somebody because you started with them. If it doesn't feel right after a little while, it's okay to say this person isn't working out for me. I'm moving on and move to the next one. Don't get stuck with the wrong coach or trainer or whatever it is, therapist. If it's not working for you, it's okay to say it's not working for me. I need to find a different situation.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So, Brian, is there anything that you want to add to our conversation before we wrap this up that you want people to really understand?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to end with giving a little bit of a positive note, and I like to hopefully give you a little bit of hope because that's really what I went through. I went through a crazy experience, and at the time where it felt the most critical, the most awful, the most desperate, it actually was working out in my favor to be the best thing that ever happened to me. So the key is to take that situation. Don't think you're being punished. I look at that as a blessing now, right? I'm being refined. Okay, when I'm going through difficulties, when I'm going through these horrible situations, I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm building muscle, if you will. I'm building strength here that I'm going to be able to get through these things. I'm learning things. A great sailor is only great because he's been through the storms. Okay. And so if you want to be a great sailor, you have to be able to go through the storms. And the only way to learn how to navigate through the storms is to go through them sometimes. Hold your head up high, have some hope, learn from this, take this experience and use it to your advantage, and tell yourself, I'm going to make this the greatest thing that ever happened to me. If my spouse has left me, if I'm broken, if I'm having horrible relationships, I'm dealing with some chaos, some craziness. Okay, catch your breath. Let's start doing the work. Let's begin the healing. Let's use this to our advantage in a way that's going to benefit me and ultimately, benefit others. So I can turn that in and maybe even help others with that. I always say they call it a breakup, not a breakdown. Okay. So if your spouse has left you, we're going to break up. We're not breaking down. We're going to move up the level. We're moving up here. This is a good thing. Okay. It's also called a heartbreak. We're going to give our heart a break. Sometimes our hearts need a little break. And so, you know what I mean? So sometimes it's just that time where we just need to work on ourselves a little bit. Let that situation go. We don't know what's going to happen there. Sometimes we don't know. And that's the best thing we can do. That's what I had to do. I had to let it go. And as I let that go, that's really when my wife and I began to come back around and things began to work out. And ultimately, when we were able to come back together, we had new tools. We had some awesome new tools that we were able to utilize. And we had a lot of new knowledge that we were able to apply to our relationship. And that's been the blessing here, is that, that the worst case situation, this craziness, this horrible situation, turned out to be the best thing ever for us in our relationship. So, and it's not your fault. Sometimes, again, we go through these things because we had, difficult parenting. This is sometimes generational. My wife and I are trying to break generational stuff, right? It's stuff that's been in our families for years. It's really brokenness. And so it can be hard. But here we are, like we want to do the work. We don't want to pass this on to our children. So it's very important for us to do as much work as possible so that they don't have to experience some of the pain and some of that struggles that we did. So, but yeah, give yourself a break and it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. It's going to work out.
I like it a lot, Bryan. Just by speaking with you, I can tell you will do a lot of good things for people. Just a good conversation can help somebody grow in so many ways. And I like what you're doing out there. Could you tell people how to reach out and get in touch with you, get involved with what you're doing?
Yeah, the best way to get in touch with me is literally just go to my website at makeyourrelationshipfail.com. You can spell that out, make your relationship fail, or myrelationshipfail.com. It's going to take you to the same website. I've got all my information there. I've got some links, social links in there. You can link up with me socially on Instagram, Facebook, stuff like that. And then I always challenge people when you go there, if you really want to begin the work, please join the personal development school from my website. When you join from my website, you'll get the best price. You can pay monthly, you can pay 3 months, yearly, whatever you want to do. It's up to you. Start off small, get involved, see if you like it. So maybe do a month or two, right? And just start off there. And when you do that through my website, again, I'm going to give you a free session. I'd love to talk with you. I love helping people. I want to hear your story. Share, you can share with me where you're at. And then I can give you some pointers, maybe some tips, and maybe some things you need to work on maybe more immediately. And then maybe set a plan for you so that we can kind of, have a long-term goal as to where maybe you want to be in the next month, 2 months, 3 months type of thing. And so that's the best place to get in touch with me. Let's connect. I love connecting with people. I've got a YouTube channel I'm starting to build. And I just want to help people. I want to share this information. And so I'm just trying to help as many people as possible. But yeah, get with me through my website, makeyourrelationshipfail.com or myrelationshipfail.com.
I like what you're doing a lot. We need a lot of people out there doing this. These conversations help people. And I've noticed there's a shift and there's a change in the attitude about the people, and they are hungry for change. That yourself and I are out there giving people. So please keep doing what you're doing, Bryan. And thank you for sharing with us here today on the podcast.
Ed, thank you so much. This is an honor to be here and a pleasure to speak with you. You're doing great stuff too. So keep up the great work, man.
Thanks, sir.
We almost didn't make it here. I pushed you out, you disappeared. The space between us turned miles. Couldn't face you, couldn't smile. Both of us bleeding, holding on to pride. Couldn't see a way to turn the tide. Rock bottom to the highest peak, restraining order made us weak, but climb back, we found the truth. From broken trust to some deeper rest and faith, yeah. Showed the way now, stronger love lives every day, every day. I learned why I would run and hide. Learn what you kept locked inside, the patterns that we couldn't see, the chains that wouldn't let us breathe. We chose to do the work to understand, reaching out to hold each other's hand. Rock bottom to the highest peak, restraining order made us weak, but we climbed back, we found the truth. From broken trust to deeper rose of theory fails when showed the way now. Stronger love is every day, every day. They said we never last, too much hurt in our past, but we proved them wrong, made each other strong. This wasn't easy love, but it's the realest love. But every tear we cried, but the pain to get it right. Rock bottom to the highest peak, restraining order made us weak, but we climbed back, we found the truth. From broken trust to deeper roots and planets head, show the way now. Stronger love is every day. Now so